Yes, so good morning again to everyone. So let me check who's haven't joined. Mm, It's okay lah. Since because every time our class there will be a Google Attendance. Google Attendance will report to me lah after this, so I won't check lah. I just assume all of you here already, since this is now 9:06 a.m. already. Okay, so as I said previously, this practical time we will use it to cover chapter 5, requirement engineering and process, because your test will be on next week, Thursday night, and then the test will be up until chapter 6. So we need to cover the chapter 5 lah. For your practical this week, you all will need to list out the non-requirement and requirement for your system. Okay, so you all can read that. And then after that, if you have any questions, you can ask. Um, mm, mm, and mm, the group leader, please submit the list of requirement and non-requirement to me by the end of this week lah. I will create the note for you all to submit like usual lah. Okay, so um, okay, group leader, Celine, Noel, and Wong, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Russell. I think Russell, sorry. Noel, Russell, and Celine. Okay, so please submit your practical for this week. If you have yeah, this week lah, by the end of this week, as long as it's Sunday, it's okay. Okay, so for the questions, it is for questions, this one, system requirement, part 2, system requirement. So you all need to compose functional requirement for each of the module in your system. And then non-functional requirement. Okay, so the non-functional requirement must cover the 3 subcategory of non-functional requirement, the product, organization, and external of your proposed system. Okay, clear, Russell, Celine, and Noel. Okay. So Russell, okay. User requirement no need. Yes, no need. User requirement no need. Okay. So we proceed with this chapter, which is the requirement engineering process. Actually, whatever that we have learned in chapter 4 previously, on this Tuesday, actually it is under, yeah, requirement specification. Okay, but later lah I will tell about this. Okay, so for the requirement engineering process, Okay, so this is the first phase that you will face. The first phase that you will face during you are getting, or I mean during after you are tendered or contracted to get a project from any client. Okay, requirement engineering process. The first phase that you will face or experience or you will need to do after you are tendered or contracted to get a software development project. Okay, so in this chapter we will learn about the process of engineering requirement, meaning the process of producing the requirement. Okay, so remember, software engineering is the process of creating the software, and for the requirement engineering, it is the process of creating the requirement. Okay, so there will be 5 activity in the requirement engineering process. We will learn later. Okay, so after that, we will discuss the problem that we will face during requirement analysis phase of software engineering. And then we will explain and evaluate or viewpoint oriented analysis. Okay, so even the DSF student previously, I think you haven't learned about viewpoint oriented analysis. So pay attention, because this is highlighted in red. So meaning it is important. So when it is important, meaning it can be, it is maybe lah, maybe or not, it will be included in your test. Okay, so test or exam lah. Okay, so what is the requirement engineering? Okay, so like I said just now, it is the process that involve all of the activity to create and maintain a system requirement document. Okay, so it doesn't matter what process, but as long as that process has the purpose to create and maintain system requirement document or gathering all of the requirement. Okay, and then we put it in one document, which is SRS, then it is called as one of the activity in the requirement engineering. And then all of that process, okay, we call as requirement engineering. Okay, so the process of gathering all of the document and then put it in one document, which is SRS, software requirement specification document, is this one. There are 5 phase of not phase. There are 5 main activity. Okay, so there are 5 main activity of the process in order for you all to create your SRS. Okay, so first is feasibility study, and then second is requirement elicitation and analysis. Okay, so this feasibility study, you will study a little bit about that software. About that software that you are going to develop. And then requirement elicitation in analysis is the process of you gathering the requirement from the stakeholder of that system. Okay, so either you are interviewing them, either you are doing research, either you are doing meeting with them. So all of that process is under this requirement elicitation and analysis. And then the requirement specification, it is already the process that we have learned in chapter 4. Okay, so the process is after you get all of the, after you interview all of the stakeholder for that system, and then you all getting the list of user requirement, right, from the requirement elicitation and analysis. After that, in the requirement specification, which we already learned in chapter 4, okay, so you will categorize each of the requirement, and then you will make details out of it lah. Okay, so you will make all of the software requirement. Okay, and then a system requirement, and then non-functional and the functional requirement too. Yeah, so that is what happened in the phase three. After that, there will be the process of validation. So after you have listed up all of the specification or system specifications, there will be a process of validation. Okay, so we will learn later how we will validate either the information inside the SRS, the system requirement that you created is valid or not. And then after that, the requirement management. The requirement management will be the process that is continuously, because we cannot change or we cannot avoid any changes in the requirement changes, because along the software development process, surely there will be requirement changes. So the requirement management will be stated in this phase lah. We will discuss and learn about that. Okay, so first we proceed to the feasibility study. Okay, so the feasibility study is you do the study about few things. Okay, before you before you gathering information from all of the stakeholder, before you go to the requirement elicitation and analysis phase, you need to do feasibility study first. It is not like you are blindly go meet your stakeholder and then just ask whatever question, unplanned questions. Okay, so it is not like that. You should do feasibility study about the system that you are going to develop before you go to gather requirement from the stakeholder. Okay, so what you will need to study? Okay, so what you will need to study is technical feasibility. Okay, so technical feasibility. Either the software that you are going to develop will use current software or hardware, or I mean maybe existing software or hardware that your software development company already have, or you need to buy new software or new hardware. Okay, so that is the first technical feasibility. You need to study about that first. After that, either you also need to do the study about the economical feasibility. Yeah, about the economical. Either it is cost effective, either if you receive that if you agree to develop that software, either it is cost effective or not. Okay, so either the process or all of the things that you will going to do later, maybe buy new software, okay, hire new SE or software engineer or programmer. Either if you do all of that, either it is still in the budget constraint or not, and then either it is cost effective or not, meaning you can get some benefit lah from that system. Okay, so not just you blindly get any software, or you blindly agree to any software without considering the constraint of the cost, because you will be wasting your time, you will be rugi banyak if you didn't do this feasibility in economy. Okay, so after that, you also will need to do operational feasibility. So in this operational feasibility, um, it is to see either the stakeholder that you will identify to be interviewed with later is willing and able to operate, use, and support the process of development of the software. Okay, so you also need to uh, identify who is the stakeholder from management, employees, or the customer and supplier. All of these person will be you need to study about them lah. Okay. Okay, so after that, organizational feasibility support the strategic objective. Okay, so this organizational feasibility meaning any of the policy that uh, need to be followed by the client organization. Okay, so either their organization support the development of that software, because sometimes if they are in the big organizations, on sometimes some department will say that they need to develop that software because that department will need to a software. But the top management said that no. Okay, so we need to study about this organizational feasibility. And then, is there any policy of that organization that will be constraint letter? Okay, okay, will be the constraint letter, because if we already know if we already know their policy, so we can prepare. For example, if we want to meet someone at the top management, maybe there are policy of us to follow the procedure first. Maybe we need to do appointment, we need to check with her personal assistant if he is available or not. And then if there are a policy like that, so we will know that what we need to do if we want to interview the stakeholder or the top management. Okay, so after that, social feasibility. Okay, so here maybe if you are going to develop a software that is maybe never developed previously, or that kind of software is very new in the area, maybe in Malaysia, something like that, like it is very new lah, it is not exposed to any Malaysian yet. Okay, so but it is only maybe available in overseas lah. Okay, so you will need to do the feasibility study about the how people will accept that system. If there are um, if there are some people that don't want to accept that system, so maybe we will need to come out how we can introduce or how we can let them want to use that system. Okay, so usually if the user is very comfortable with the way they are doing the operation daily, usually for some non-computer literate person lah. Okay, so they are comfortable to do or to complete their task in manual way. The things that when they learn a new software, it is very hard for them because they are not computer literate. Usually, this is happen when the staff is a veteran already lah. Okay, so because the veteran staff usually they are they are not really into technology. They are really comfortable and confident with the way they are doing their job. Okay, because they say that they can do their job even though they already use that way of completing their task um, since they started their job. So they are very confident with their way of work. So this is this the factor that we need to uh, do the study also, because if they don't want to accept that system but their top management wants, so we need to find a way on how we can attract them to use that system lah. Okay, so after that, schedule feasibility. Okay, so either the time given by the client is relevant or not. Either we really can complete that system within the time plan or not. Okay, so all of this will be done by a project manager as the leader, and then he will get help from the software team lah. Okay, so legal feasibility, either the software will be legally accepted. Okay, so for example, if you are going to develop a software for a government, and then you will need to use some of the confidential informations like IC number. Okay, so you cannot actually suka-suka hati develop a software that actually require that kind of informations. Okay, so we need to get some approval from government if we want to develop a software like that. Okay, so even last time, I remember last time when I was the programmer, our company interested to develop a software that can help in the COVID-19 problem lah. Okay, so we plan some software that can track like My Sejahtera lah, before My Sejahtera introduced. Okay, so during the first few months before, after the 2020, before the pandemic kicked in. Okay, so we plan our my last company planned to have something like My Sejahtera, but our constraint that time is because we need to actually scan IC, and then that is not easily can be approved. Okay, so that's why you need to go through some procedure. Okay, so that kind of study you will need to do, because if you are blindly collecting informations from public and then getting their IC number, and then the information will be leaked later, no. At the end, Sabah government have their own software, but we have proposed a software to the Sabah government, and then but they actually have their own software company already lah. Software company that is they choose lah. They already have their own software company that they prefer. But last time we just try our luck lah, because we already do the prototype, we already do the all of the storyboard, and then we have some prototype of software lah to show it to them. But lastly, that software now is used by the sister company of my old company lah. It is not used by government because my government already have a Sabah Trust. But when we proposed it, Sabah Trust also haven't exist lah that time. Okay, so Sabah Trust is for Sabah, right? Okay, after that, My Sejahtera. My Sejahtera now is already overlap overlap my Sabah Trust already, right? Sabah Trust no longer used, right? Okay, so yeah, last time we tried to do also like that lah, but it's not accepted lah. Okay, but it's the software still be used lah. Okay, so after that, if we can get all of the informations, and then we don't need to do any procedure lah. But like I said just now, the legal feasibility, you need to study, because if you are blindly, then you can get penalty. If you are blindly collecting informations from the public, and then uh, the government know about that, then you kena lah, because that is not that is a serious crime lah. Okay, because uh, actually all of the IC number, if it is leaked out, then it is very dangerous lah. Okay, so only some government organization that is actually, for example, the Jabatan Pendaftaran Negara, they are the body that the only body that can collect all of that requirement. But if you really need, and then you already tendered by the government, then okay. But if you are just a company, software company that try to get the contract, and then it's apalah. Okay, so we proceed. Okay, so when you do the feasibility study, it should be cheap and quick. Okay, so the result should inform the decision of whether to go ahead with a more detailed analysis. Okay, so if you already okay with all of the feasibility study that you have studied previously, like the cost, the legal, and then it is, if it is all okay, then you need to decide lah, either to go with more detailed analysis or not. Okay, so if it is not cost effective, it is you can get more harm than benefit to develop that software, then stop. If it can give some benefit of you, and then you think that you are confident to proceed with that system, then you can go and proceed. Okay, so after we do the feasibility study, after the team or the project manager discuss, and then they decide to go with the system, then it we started the process of requirement analysis and elicitation. So in this process, we will learn, we will do the requirement gathering from all of the stakeholder. Okay. After that, we also do analysis lah. Analysis of all of the requirement that we want to gather from the stakeholder. Okay, so in this phase, when you do the analysis, you will deriving the system requirement from the stakeholder. Okay, so you get the user requirement from the stakeholder kan. So as a software engineer, you will need to derive system requirement from that user requirement. After that, so what is the stakeholder? Stakeholder is any person or group who will be affected by the system, directly or indirectly. Okay, so directly meaning the end user of the system. Okay, indirectly is maybe the top management of the client, because they didn't use that system, maybe lah, but they are the one who decide whatever information or whatever approval that is needed for that system. Okay, so that is the indirect stakeholder lah. Okay, so after that, this process of requirement analysis and elicitation is actually a little bit difficult process. Why? Because when you ask a stakeholder, because they are not in technical field, so they also not clear of what they want. Okay, so they only want to know that they want a system that can make their life easier, but they don't know how. Okay, so we need to make it clear for them, and then um, when we make it clear to them, we need to do e- every activity that can make them clear of what they want lah. Maybe like we do the prototyping okay, and then we write what we understand first, and then we show it to them, and then when they agree of that, then baru we know lah what they want. Okay, so why? And then another why it is difficult, because they will use their own terms. Okay, so they will use their own terms of describing what they want. So sometimes we also don't understand their terms. Okay, so for example, they are in the engineering field. If they use some technical terms of engineering and we all don't know about that, then it is also take time for us lah to understand. Okay, so after that, the different stakeholder express requirement in different ways. Okay, so maybe you ask the uh, a client also, but they are only a different person. They are in one department but different person. Okay, so they said that they want when they're explaining what they want, so they will explain it in their own ways. Okay, so we are the person that need to identify either they are saying the same things or not. Okay, so after that, it is also will be influenced by political factor, and then it is also will change based on to economic and business environment, and then okay, so political factor. If you all remember last time, first Sabah government during the Sabah Trust, it was the time before it is the time Shafi'i Afdal become our CM. And then after that, because it not long time after that, it is changed already to Hajiji. Okay, so um, during that time, the 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 management of Sabah already changed. Haji during, if I'm not mistaken lah, during Shafi Abdal, they introduced Sabah Tres. And then after that, Sabah Tres already terkubur because of Haji already take place. If I'm not mistaken last time lah. Okay, so the political factor also will affect the analysis. Okay, so the requirement gathering, because sometimes when we change government, some government will stop the budget for that project. Okay, so the most important example now is the development of Pen Borneo lah, Pen Borneo, because of our government is always change, and then the decision and then the development of Pen Borneo a little bit uh, stop lah, because the person that do the decisions is changing. Okay, so and then the new one will need to learn and study about the project, and then they will need to decide either the current political support that project or not. Okay, so this is one of the example of the political factor lah. Okay, so after that, so in the requirement analysis and elicitation, these are the process. Okay, so in the analysis and elicitation process, these are its own process. First, requirement discovery, and then after you discover all of the requirement, you will need to do the classification of that requirement. Okay, so for example, if you already have all of your system requirement, after that you classified it into non-organizational or functional, non-organizational lah pula, a non-functional and functional requirement. And if you, and then you also need to classify them based on either they are product, no, non-functional. If it is non-functional, then you need to further classify it into the three classification, which is the product, external, and organizational. Okay, After that, requirement prioritization and negotiation. After we classify each of the requirement, system requirement, we need to prioritize which requirement will be at the top. Meaning, if it is at the top, then you need to do that first. Okay? And then after that, the requirement documentations lah. Okay, so after that, during the requirement discovery, you will need to interact with the stakeholder to discover the requirement. Okay, so not only stakeholder, but you also can refer to any documentations, for example, the organizational policy, and then you also can find some informations from some existing similar system. Maybe you already created, or your company already developed that kind of system previously, or if no, then maybe you can search some similar system from the internet. Okay, so you can get all of the information or requirements from these sources lah: stakeholder, documentation, and similar system specification. Okay, so this is the highlight of this software, which is object oriented viewpoint oriented analysis. Okay, so during the requirement discovery, we will go through this process, which is viewpoint oriented analysis. So what is this analysis? Okay, so this is the process of us to identify um, the interactor or the stakeholder of that system. Viewpoint of all stakeholder. Yes. Okay. So in this process, in this analysis, you will need to identify the stakeholder that is interact directly with the system, meaning like the end user of the system, and then the system feature and interfaces. So this is the first things that you will need to do when you do the viewpoint oriented analysis. Okay, so to identify the interactive viewpoint. So what is the interactive viewpoint? It is the stakeholder that interact directly with the system and the system features and the interface of the system that you are going to develop. Okay, so after that, you will identify the indirect viewpoints. Indirect viewpoints will include um, any requirement that should not be used. Sorry. The indirect viewpoints is the stakeholder that not directly use that system. Like I said just now lah, the top management or maybe the investor of that system. They are not using that system, but they are contributing their money to that system. Okay, so they are also the stakeholder, even though they are not directly use that system. Okay, so indirect viewpoints is the stakeholder that didn't use that system, but they will influence the requirement. Okay, so they will also can provide the high level requirements and constraint. Okay, so because they are not using that system, so maybe they only can set the high level requirement. Maybe they say that, oh, okay, we want a software that blah 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 lah. Okay, they only know that lah, but they didn't know the details. So that's why it is a high level requirement lah. Meaning the stakeholder didn't know or didn't propose any requirement that is very detailed, but they can give high level requirement and constraint. The stakeholder is actually whoever person, or maybe system also. System. Okay, so let me get back to you about the system lah. But stakeholder is, I think person. Sorry, yeah. Stakeholder is any person that can give influence to the system. They have direct or indirect connection to that system. Okay, so the example of the direct stakeholder is the end user of the system. Okay, so at the end of the development, and then the one that will use that system is the end user. Okay, so that is the direct stakeholder. Okay, so the indirect stakeholder is the example of the indirect stakeholder is investor. They are not using that system, but they can give high level requirement and constraint, and then they can influence the requirement. Okay, so for example, because the investor will invest their money to that system, and then if they said they only give this amount of money to that company, to the client, to the client company, to buy the system from you. Okay, so because of they said that they only can invest about 100,000 money to your client company. So your client company also, if they didn't get any investor from any company, they only rely on that investor, then they only also say to you that, okay, we only have this budget 100,000. Okay, so can you do this software for us? Okay, so that makes the investor have the influence on the requirement of that system. Okay, Kelvin? The interactor is the direct stakeholder. The direct stakeholder is the yeah end user. End user, whoever use that system. Okay. So when you do the viewpoint oriented analysis, you have to identify these two viewpoints, interactor and indirect viewpoints. Actually, interactor ni we can say that it is also known as direct viewpoints. Direct viewpoints and indirect viewpoints. But they put the name here interactor. Okay, so we follow the expert lah. Okay, so after that, we also need to identify the domain viewpoints. Okay, so the domain viewpoints is this is not stakeholder, but any policy that will influence the requirement of the system also. Either it is policy or third-party software. Okay, so it is not a stakeholder. Only the interactor and indirect viewpoints is referring to a stakeholder. But domain viewpoints, it is referring to any maybe policy, maybe external uh, third party. Okay, so maybe uh, the third party software that is used by your client company. Okay, so maybe because we want to integrate our system to the existing system. Okay, so maybe we need to do something in our system in order to match with the requirement. So in order for us to integrate with the existing system, so the constraint that we face when we creating the requirement And then it is under the domain constraints ni lah. Okay, so we will see later, if I'm not mistaken, there will be example of this lah. Okay, so remember viewpoint oriented analysis, we will identify this viewpoint, 3 viewpoint. Okay, so this is the example lah. So for the ATM system, the interactor viewpoint is the bank customer, because ATM, right, we are using the system, the bank customer, bank staff, and bank database. Okay, so after that, the indirect viewpoint, bank manager, bank security staff, bank marketing staff. Okay, so from this example, you all can see, right? So it is not only a person, but also any entity that have direct connection to that ATM. Okay, so for example here, bank database. So forgive me for the misleading just now. Okay, so viewpoint, the interactive viewpoint and indirect viewpoint, it is also can refer to non-person, meaning any entity also can be the viewpoint. Okay, so for example here, the interactive viewpoint, the bank database also interact, even though it is not a person. Okay, so indirect viewpoint. Okay, so this is the example, but actually maybe bank manager also will use the bank at the ATM lah, right? But based on its position, itulah. For for this, I think for this topic, for this viewpoint, I will need to get back to you all or of the definition of it lah, because previously we didn't cover the definition of viewpoint. But for now, if we see here, it is bank database. It is, if it is admin, either it is a typo or not. Okay, so I'm not so sure about that. Okay, so but here it is bank database. So I think it is entity. But later lah, I will double confirm about this to all of you, because this is important. Okay, ASAP lah. Okay, so after that, indirect viewpoint, bank manager, bank security, even though actually bank manager also the interactor of the ATM system, but based on its position here, bank manager, meaning he is the one who manage the bank, and then this in this position doesn't mean that he will need to use directly the ATM. So he is under the indirect viewpoint. And then bank security staff, bank marketing staff. Okay, so indirect meaning they are not using that system, but they can give the influence to the requirement of the system. Okay, so for the domain viewpoint, so here maybe the standard policy for interbank communication. Okay, so another viewpoint that should be taken into the considerations when you do the viewpoint oriented analysis is provider and receiver of the system services, other system interface directly with the system. Okay, so this is like I said, maybe there are any other third party software that should be integrated with the system. And then some the regulations and the standard, engineering viewpoint, and marketing viewpoint. Okay, so all of them usually they are not directly use that system, but they will influence the requirement gathering of that system. Okay, so even the engineering viewpoint, because we are bound to any to to some rules of engineering, then we cannot do that. Okay. Okay, so engineering viewpoint is also can give influence to the requirement gathering or to the requirement elicitations and analysis. Okay, so this is the example of college library system. Then you all will need to list the possible viewpoint for the college library system. Okay, so this is the example of the questions that can be asked during the test or exam lah. Okay, so answer here is so you will need to list them out based on the three viewpoint just now: the interactor, indirect, and the domain. Okay, so the interactor viewpoints is the student, lecturer, tutor, system engineer, and librarian. So indirect viewpoints is library manager, finance department, and maybe supplier of the books. Okay. And then domain viewpoints, the any policy and standard that can give influence to the system. For example, user interface standard, okay, the classification standard. Okay, so this is also the some of the this is also the example of the question that can be asked during the exam or test lah. Okay, so after you have listed out all of the viewpoint just now, and then you will need to create hierarchy. So this hierarchy also must be based on the three category of viewpoint just now. Okay, so all viewpoints we can divide it into indirect, interactor, and domain, and then we can you all can see here lah. So it is actually similar with this, but just in hierarchy forms. Okay, so another exercise for viewpoint is online hotel room reservation system. Okay, so how you can answer this is by, if you found any questions like this, identify five viewpoints of an online hotel room reservation system and prepare a viewpoint hierarchy. So you can directly create the hierarchy about that. Okay, so just remember, whenever it is asked about viewpoint analysis, okay, so you all need to come out with these three viewpoint lah: interactor, indirect, and domain viewpoint. After that, you will need to identify and specify clearly who is under each of these viewpoint. Okay, so for the hotel room reservation systems, okay, so you all can see that because it is reservation system, so of course there will be an online client. Okay, so that is the end user of that system. And then reservation staff lah, the staff that will manage the reservation. And then marketing department and hotel manager is also someone that can influence the system, but indirectly, because maybe marketing department, they are not using that system, but when marketing department maybe do some promotion, we need to do something to our system. Okay, so maybe we need to follow their occasionally promotion from that is planned by the marketing department, and then it must our system must conforms with their promotion. Okay, so the marketing department also have influence indirectly to the system. And then hotel manager is someone that can approve all of the decision that need to be done. Okay, I read first. And then so the domain viewpoint, usually domain, it is usually referring to any policy or standard that need to be followed. Okay, so In this, maybe we can say that user interface standard, or maybe we can say that any policy that's setting out the rules and regulation uh, that need to be followed by that hotel visitor. Okay. Okay. So why we need to do this viewpoint analysis, and then why we need to do the hierarchy. Okay. So why? What do you think, guys and girl? Why do we need to do this? Why bother to do the hierarchy? I will ask someone now. Okay. Okay, Noel, you can think and then answer, and then I will also call some name. Lim, why do you think we need to go through this uh, why need to do the hierarchy lah? Okay, in short, why we just don't need we just need to identify and then go to the stakeholder. Why we must do this hierarchy? Anybody can think of a reason. Okay, Lim and no, Russell cannot yet. Celine and Zisheng Wong. Zisheng Wong, Celine, and Lim. Why do we need to do this hierarchy? Why we just cannot just list out and then just go with the usual way? Why must a hierarchy? Hi guys, if you are here, please acknowledge, because if you are just silent kan, so I guess that you are not here lah. Okay, Noel and Farah here. Lim, okay, Lim also here. Okay, so yeah, Celine also here. Okay, Zisheng Wong, are you here? Because if I'm waiting, we will wasting our time. If you need time to think, then please acknowledge. Okay, so Noel, do you have idea? Hmm. Kelvin said, make better decisions. Yeah, also, but what decision? Okay, so there's actually a decision that we will need to make. So that's why we need to make the hierarchy. Okay, Farah said to give them responsibility to get the decision. Okay, so Farah also yes. Yes. And then Kelvin said targeted decision. Easier to plan out for Jonathan. To identify the stakeholder better, Wong. Um, yeah, to identify the stakeholder better also yes. Easier to plan out, Jonathan, yes. Okay, so yeah, okay lah. All of you can get the idea already lah. Okay, so beside all of your answer, okay, so when we do the hierarchy, okay, so imagine that your client company have a lot of user. or stakeholder. Okay, so indirect stakeholder also a lot, um, direct user also a lot. And then do you need to ask everyone, or for example the user of that system, the interactor of the system, there is about 100%. Okay, so do you will need to ask them one by one to get the requirement? Okay, of course no lah, right? So that's why we do the hierarchy, so that we will know, or we so that we can know who is the stakeholder that we can focus on. And then maybe if there are a lot of stakeholder in the interactive viewpoint, then we may choose some, maybe some from the top, and then this the someone from the middle position, and then somebody from the lowest position. Okay, so that we can cover the requirement from all level. Okay, so all of your answer here, for example, Jonathan, easier to plan out. Yes, easier to, meaning easier to plan out who is the stakeholder that we are going to ask later. Usually randomly choose or got representative. If, like I said just now, if the your client side only have few stakeholder, meaning dia punya user pun not up until 10, then you maybe can ask them, all of the user, because it is not until 10 ma. Maybe you can just group them in one meeting, and then you ask them one by one. Okay, but like I said just now, if your client have even the user, if the user of the, for example, hotel lah, hotel reservation system. Okay, so the user of the system not only the online client. Okay, so online client, you know, right? Online client, you cannot ask all of the clients, so you need to get some, you choose some random lah. Okay, so that one is can random. And then for the user from the, if imagine that we have a hotel management, hotel reservation, we also, beside the online client, we also have the reservation staff, right? The staff that will manage the reservation. Okay, so maybe the staff that will manage the reservation, not only the staff, only one staff, but maybe you also will need to ask any other staff. Maybe the staff that make the reservation, maybe a lot lah. Maybe it has more than 10 ka, or if the hotel have different branch, and then each of the branch will have its own representative of doing the reservation or managing the reservation. So do you will need to ask every representative of from each of the branch, or you can just pick a few. Okay, but usually if they are doing the same thing, they will, their task will be the usually will be same lah. Okay, so what Kelvin asked about usually randomly choose or got representative. Okay, so it is based on the user, the number of the user, and then the nature of the user. The nature, I mean, if it is online user, then you of course lah, you cannot ask everyone in the online for the online user, right? So you have to randomly choose. But for the staff, or for the staff or stakeholder that directly can operate that system, for example, the reservation manager tu lah. Okay, so you can got representative. Okay, so if there are a lot, but if no, then you can just gather them all in one room and ask them one by one. Okay, so it is based on the situation. Okay, Kelvin? Okay, situation and size. Okay, so yeah, so all of your answers are here. Easier to plan out. Yes, to identify the stakeholder better. Yes, because you know who you will need to find later if you want to ask something. Okay, so if you identify the stakeholder better, then you can directly search for the correct person. Okay, targeted decision, like Kelvin said, yeah, to make the targeted decision. So correct lah. But Kelvin, can you please explain the targeted decision? Can make better decision, yes. Okay, correct. To give them responsibility, fairer, yes. Because if we want to ask them, then their responsibility is to to answer our questions lah. Kelvin, what do you mean by targeted decision? Like want to know what to do to satisfy different stakeholder requirement. Ah, yes. Okay, correct. Okay, so if you answer these questions later, don't just put these very simple words lah, like easier to plan out, to identify the stakeholder better. You all need to explain a little bit lah. Maybe to give example. For example, you said too easier to plan out. Okay, so just give the example what need to be planned. Okay, Jonathan, because it is hard to give mark if you just put that easier to plan out. Okay. Okay, so this is how you can answer why. Okay, so for large system, there are huge number of viewpoints. Okay, so it is practically impossible to elicit requirement from all of them. So hence, the hierarchy helps to identify a viewpoint in the same branch are likely to share some common requirement, and SE may not need to elicit requirement from each of them. Okay, so maybe yeah, I know lah. I understand, Jonathan. So because now you are all answering me, right? So yeah, but later when you answer like this lah. Huh? Okay, so NSE may not need to elicit requirement from each of them. So like I said just now lah, maybe we can just pick some representative if the number of viewpoint is too large. Okay, so another answer is to help ensuring all VPs are covered in the analysis and elicitation stage. Okay, so for example, if it is too large, the number of viewpoints, then maybe you can ask some, pick some representative from the top management, and then in the middle management, and then the lowest management, so that you can cover, you have the requirement from all level of position in your client punya side. Okay, so after that, it is to help to decide whether viewpoint is a valid viewpoint or not lah. Okay, so it is not just because if you don't have this viewpoint list, and then you will be randomly as the staff there, even though the staff is not related to the system. It is not indirectly or directly connected to the system. Okay, so yeah, so it is to decide whether the viewpoint is a really valid viewpoint for that system. Okay, so we take 5 minutes lah rest. So we go back at 10 10:20 lah. Okay, 10:20. Okay. Okay, so we meet again. And for the one that I said I will get back to you all later, okay, about the viewpoint, the definition of the interactive viewpoint. Okay, so we can go back here again for the definition of the interactive viewpoint. Okay, so here, okay, so here. Okay, so actually, the interactive viewpoint is the idea it is the user that will interact directly with the system like the end user lah. And then also it is also can refer to the system feature or interface. Okay, so system feature and interface here actually referring to maybe some third party software. Okay, so yes, yes, siapa tu tadi? Noel? Astagfirullahaladzim, yes. Uh, yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is I forgot to highlight here the another definition about the interactive viewpoint. Okay, so it is actually Noella, and then those who apa tuh curious about what is actually the interactive viewpoint. Okay, so interactive viewpoint is not only referring to a person or a person that directly use that system, but they also referring to any system or interfaces or system lah, system, any system feature that will directly, or any system that is not the system, third party software lah, third party system ke apa. Okay, so but directly have interaction with the system. Okay, so like third party software lah. If it is need to be integrated to the system, then they also can be considered as interactive viewpoint. Okay, so as long as that system will have to interact with our system, so we can also call it as interactive viewpoint. Okay, everyone. So forgive me previously because not so sure about this. Okay, so only the indirect viewpoint is referring to a person, but the person that is not use that system and influence, but they influence the requirement, and then they can give high level requirement, and they also can give constraint to the requirement. Okay, okay, management and marketing don't use. They use. They are used. They are under indirect viewpoint, management and marketing. Okay, Kelvin, if you see ni example of indirect viewpoint, they are not using it, but they will give influence. Okay, Kelvin. Okay. So we proceed. So we are finished with the viewpoint oriented analysis. So you all can understand about that, because I think that is the highlight. Okay, thank you. Okay, so these are the technique of how you can collect requirement or gather requirement from all of your viewpoint tu lah. Okay, so it doesn't matter either it is indirect interact or domain. So this is the technique of how you can get the informations from them. Okay, so interview, prototyping, you give them a scenario. Scenario is the real life example. Okay, so if they are if they don't really understand about what we are talking about, so maybe we can search some real life example that is familiar to them, to give them understanding about what we want from them lah. Okay, so observation meaning you go there, you go to their workplace, and then you observe them how they do their work. Okay. Um, Okay, so the advantage about when you are doing the observation is you can get implicit system requirement. Implicit meaning it is very obvious requirement lah, because you saw how they do their task. So without you asking them, and then without you make them explain it to you, you understand it in your own way lah. Okay, so it is implicit system requirement. Okay, so you can also the observation also focus on end user requirement. Okay, so like previously the problem of how what we can get from the stakeholder, right? Because stakeholder also don't know what they want. Okay, so by just watching them without asking them anything, without needing them to explain anything to us, but we just watch them, then we already can understand what they will do lah, in their daily tasks. Okay, so you know about the interview, you also know about the prototyping, right? So we will not cover this deeply lah. Okay, so we proceed to the another step or another activity under analysis and elicitations. Okay, so which is requirement classification and organization. So in this phase, we will need to organize the requirement into cluster lah. Okay, so into cluster meaning you define them lah, which is the non-functional, which is the functional requirement, which is the product, which is the organizational, and which is the external requirement. And then in here also, because we already can make the classification, and then we can clearly see all of the requirement that we already derive from the user requirement, then we can remove the overlapping requirement. Okay, so that's there are no duplicate requirement. Okay, so the example of how you can do classification and organization in the hotel management system is maybe you can do the classification based on the module, meaning all of the requirement that related to the customer or related to the module in the system. Okay, so not only based on the categorization of the system requirement, all of the non-functional and functional and non-functional like that lah. Okay, but you also can classify them based on the module in the system. Okay, so you collect all of the requirement based on customer registration, check-in, room reservation, check-out, print report. Okay, so why we need to do these classifications? So maybe later when we assign some programmer or team to only develop this module, and then another team will only develop this module, and we can specifically give that requirement to that specific team so that they also will not confuse which requirement is belongs to their module. Okay, so which requirement they need to follow in order to develop that module. Okay, so after that, in the requirement analysis and elicitation also, you need to do requirement prioritization and negotiation. So you will need to prioritize all of the requirement lah. Okay, so you also can resolve conflicts. Okay, so like I said previously, we need to prioritize requirement because we need to know, especially when we don't have enough staff to do all of the module or all of the requirement in the same time. So we need to prioritize the requirement so that we know which requirement that we can do first. Okay, which requirement is needed the most by the client first. Okay, so after that we can resolve conflicts lah. Okay, so for example, if we already have our prioritized requirement, then we don't need to give all of the requirement to our staff, even though we don't have enough staff. But if we didn't prioritize the requirement, then we give all of the requirement to them, and then they also don't know which needs to be done first. Okay, so that will create the conflicts lah. So that's why we need to we need to prioritize the requirement. Okay, so after that, lastly, in the requirement analysis and elicitation, we will need to do the requirement documentation. So in this requirement documentations, we will complete, we will need to document all of the requirement lah. Okay, so completely consistent and in accordance with the stakeholders requirement lah. Okay, so after that, after we do all of the requirement analysis and elicitation, meaning after we get all of the requirement from the client, then we do the requirement specifications. So in this process is whatever that we have discussed in chapter 4. So we will not cover this again in this chapter. Okay, so we will proceed directly to the requirement validation. Okay, so after we get all of the requirement, okay, we will need someone to validate. We will need a process to validate all of the requirement that we wrote in the SRS. Okay, so there are several aspects of requirement that must be checked in order to validate either the requirement is really confirms with the client or user requirement. First, validity. Okay, for example, you need to validate either functions that user wanted is correct and it is confirmed needed. Okay, so we don't want to waste our time to develop something that is not needed. So we need to validate either that requirement is really needed. After that, the consistency. Um, for example, there are no conflict requirement. Okay, so for example, in the first requirement, you said that the client wants the 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 the, the, the clients wants one function which is report functions that only available during uh, during uh, I mean, all of that report must be available 24 hours per day and then 7 days per week. But another requirement said the report must be only available during working hour and working day. Okay, so that is not consistent and it is conflicted. So it is the responsibility of the inspector to check this kind of conflict so that each of the requirement is not conflicted to each other. Okay, so um, so the example for electronic library system. Okay, so here, for example, it says that uh, the library system will allow user to retrieve items in any format. In any format. Okay, so meaning PDF also can, JPEG also can, DOCX also can. They said that, but the system said that the system will not convert any file. Okay, so usually if the system doesn't have the function to convert any file, and then um, but they said that the system can achieve or sorry, can accept or retrieve items in any format, but I think this requirement is conflicted because um, you don't have the option of file conversion, but you said it can receive by any format. But usually, system when you when you have function of uploading and downloading function into your system, um, if you didn't code it correctly, it only can accept certain file. Okay, so it only can accept certain file if the system didn't code correctly. Okay, so in order for you to allow your system to receive item in any format, so you need to make sure that you have the file conversion uh, function, so that if the user upload any files, okay, so for example, the files that is not usually be used. For example, .mpp, you know the extension of the our Microsoft project, right? It is .mpp. And then you said that your system will retrieve any retrieve or accept lah, any files in any format, meaning including the MPP lah. But usually MPP is not very common file type. Okay, so usually it will not be accepted. So in order for you to make your system to retrieve or to accept the MPP file, the Microsoft project file, you need to have one function that convert the system, the file, so that your system can convert the MPP into any type of file that is accepted by your system, so that there will be no error in the future. Okay, so this is the example of a requirement that has conflict. Okay, so the inspector will need to detect this kind of requirement. Okay, so this is the example of still in the electronic library. Okay, so for example, there are contexts here. The purpose of this project is to create an attractive user-friendly prototype for a virtual archive. Example, a virtual framework for virtual items or collection groups within a larger collection of research material. Okay, so requirement A, item retrieval. Okay, so this option allows the user to retrieve items in any format. Okay, so no file conversion, but requirement B, they said that no file conversion. Okay, so file conversion should not be supported. Okay, meaning your system should not convert any file. Okay, so um, we can tag requirement A as a usability requirement, and then requirement B we can tag as a cost schedule requirement. So the conflict identification here is expert. I forget I forgot this the full name of this but quality assurance requirement, CC I forgot lah, but this one QA is quality assurance lah. Quality assurance expert knowledge system flags the possibility of a conflict due to the fact that usability and cost schedule requirement typically stand a good chance of conflicting with each other. Okay, so the conflict is then verified by the development team with the following issue. What is what is mean? What does it mean by any format? And then it may not be possible to retrieve any format since file conversion will not be supported. Okay, so this is what I said just now lah. You said that your system can retrieve any format, but you don't allow the file conversion. So how? Because usually your system will cannot accept any format. If you because so far when I found when I code a download and upload system, you will need to specify the format that you can accept. Okay, so it is impossible for us to list out all of the format of the file in the world because there is a lot. We don't know from any other field there will be any other type of file that they can upload. Okay, so it is like impossible lah for you to accept any format without the file conversion punya function. So like I said just now lah, the inspector should detect this kind of conflict in the requirement. Sometimes if you can just read this kan, it is no, there are no conflict if you don't understand the requirement correctly. Okay, so understand kah this part? How you validate the requirement? Okay, only Noel lah understand. How about the others? Please hand raise. Okay, good. Okay, so we still in the requirement validation. Okay, so we already talk about validity and consistency, and now completeness. Meaning when the for the completeness, the inspector or the validator will need to refer to the user requirement. Okay, user requirement, and then he will needs to check your system requirement. Either all of the user requirement is already covered or already derived using when he reads your system requirement, then it is already all covered whatever the user requirement. So that is the completeness lah. Okay, so and then realism check. Okay, so check either the requirement, that requirement or system requirement or the user requirement that is given by the user is a real requirement or a valid requirement lah. Okay, so after that verifiable. Okay, so we can either the verifiable is we need to make sure that all of the requirement, either it is user I mean, of course the system requirement lah. Okay, so we need to make sure, sorry, the inspector need to make sure that each of the system requirement is measurable and can be achieved by using demo. Like I said just now lah, the measurable is, for example, if you said that the system must be give feedback faster. Okay, so or maybe you said the system must give a display of the report um, fast or quick. You just say like that lah. So is the quick or the fast is measurable? No, right? Okay, so some people say that 10 second is fast, but some people say that 10 second is too slow for the system to respond. Okay, so that is something that unmeasurable. If you just say something like so subjective, like slow, fast, or stuff, it is not details. Okay, so the inspector must to make sure that each of the requirement is measurable. For example, if you say that you want the system to give you fast response, so you need to specify the time. Okay, so for example, you said that the system must be able to display the report within 2 seconds. Okay, so after that, later, when people are checking your functions or the function of the system, and then they compare it with the system requirement, then they can say that that system requirements is already fulfilled because they can see that if they can see that the system can generate report within 2 seconds, then it is okay lah. But if it is out, meaning more than 2 seconds, then your requirement, your system need to be uh, amended again to make that your system be able to give to or generate report within just 2 seconds. Okay, so please make sure the inspector will really need to verify either each of the requirement is measurable, or even though it is not measurable, it can be shown in a demo so that we have something to say that okay, this requirement is already achieved. Okay, so what are the method can be used to validate user requirement? So first, we can do the prototyping, and then we can do structured walkthrough, and then we can do technical review. Okay, so prototyping, you know lah, right? We do some prototyping, and then we show it to the client, and then we make the client sign something that they are actually agree the with the prototype. And then the structured walkthrough, meaning you show the system demo to the client. You say that okay, after this we go to this, and then we go to this. We show all the walkthrough of the system. Okay, or okay, so and then after that, formal technical review. This formal technical review, it's like you do the meeting, and then there will be a review. The reviewer is not from the staff that is involved in creating the document. So the reviewer must be someone that is have the knowledge in that kind of system and have the knowledge in software engineering law on how to validate user requirement. But he must not someone from the person who created that document, so that they are no bias, and then so that he also have some view that is not maybe because when you are someone from uh, someone that is not involved in the validate in creating that software will have some view that is not, I mean, the person that created that requirement will haven't think before. Okay, so meaning the third person will have different view. So he can detect if there are any anomaly or incompleteness or ambiguous or any error in the requirement SRS lah in the document. Okay, so that is the formal technical review. Okay, so we have about 12 minutes to cover the requirement management. Okay, so requirement management is not only be done during the requirement engineering, because this is the continuous process, because the requirement will change not only during the requirement gathering or requirement engineering phases, but also requirement can change throughout all of the process of software development. So this process is actually continuous, but starting with the phase of requirement engineering lah. Okay, so this is how you can manage the requirement. Okay, so first, management planning. You will need to plan how you manage the requirement based on the policy and procedure that maybe your company or your software company already have the policy and procedure on how to manage the requirement. Okay, so you need to do the planning based on the policy and procedure. Okay, so after that, you also will need to manage the changes in requirement. Okay, so in order to in order to manage the changes in the requirement, you will need to analyze the changes, and then you need to assess the impact of the requirement changes. Okay, so if you so in the requirement management, you assess the impact and then you analyze the changes. Wait, let me think of some example of this. Since we already finished, so we have 10 minutes. Okay, so change management. Mm. Okay, so in the change management, you will analyze when there are new requirement coming, or there are new, no, not requirement coming, yeah, either new or there are amendment of the existing requirement. Then first what you will need to do is you need to analyze the changes first, either maybe for example, and then assess the impact. Okay, so meaning to say that you need to check either the new coming requirement or the changes in the requirement will affect the current development of the system or not. Okay, so either the changes will cause major changes or amendment to the system. Okay, so either you need to maybe charge extra cost to your client because of maybe the changes or the requirement is too too expensive to proceed, because maybe the requirement maybe need new technology and that new technology is not available in your current company, so you will need to buy it, and then that costs previously are not included in the development cost. Okay, so you need to analyze and assess the impact of each of the requirement changes. Okay, so like I said just now, this process not only occur in the requirement engineering phase, but it is happening throughout all of the software development process, because we changes in requirement is inevitable, meaning it is unavoidable lah. Okay, so do you have any questions? Okay, no, from Feather, so far no, no at the moment. Okay, so you all try to do the tutorial 5, 4, 5, and 6. I think I already uploaded that in our Google Classroom. Let me check out if it is there already. And then we will discuss that during next week, practical and tutorial time. Okay, so we will take some time to check your practical, and then after that we will discuss the tutorial lah for the question for the tutorial 4, 5, and 6, because in the night after that you will do the test, right? So it is important for you to do the tutorial, because the tutorial because I see the tutorial questions, it is good enough to as the practice for you all to answer the questions in the test. Okay, so yeah, I already uploaded. Tutorial 6 haven't. I will upload the tutorial 6 now lah. Okay, wait lah. Miss, possible to cover that on Monday night, so have time to do revision. Monday night. Monday night. We have our replacement class on Monday, right? Already uploaded? Yeah. Oh yeah. Because on Monday we will cover chapter 6. So if we can finish chapter 6 faster, then we can cover the tutorial lah. Because our replacement class, it will be on 4 until 6, right? Because I'm not sure. Yeah, so 4 until 6. And then you also have full class, right, during that day. I am not sure if you all. Oh, I chapter 6 covered. Or okay, so don't forget that chapter 6 also covered. That's why I am trying so hard to cover all of that questions, all of that topics before your test. Okay, so here now to chapter 1 until 6. Yes. Okay, so don't worry, because I think that based on whatever that we have discussed previously, I think it is not so hard for you all lah. Test is next Thursday. Yes. Uh, okay, so you all see my schedule here, right? We will have our replacement class on Monday. This is the replacement for Tuesday because Tuesday cuti, right? Public holiday. Okay, so we need to do the replacement on Monday for the Tuesday punya lecture. Okay, so in this class we will cover chapter 6. Okay, so after that, during this time, because some of your friends go to vaccination, if I'm not mistaken, then we cannot do the test during this time. Instead, we will discuss the 4, 5, tutorial 4, 5, and 6 during the morning. After that, we will have a test during at the night of the Thursday. Okay, you can see here this one and this one. Okay, everyone, everybody is clear. So, is there any questions? Three tutorials in one session. Okay lah. I think ah you all answer the tutorial for all of you will answer. You should answer the tutorial 4 and 5 lah. Okay, so I will check and then I will comment so that maybe for the chapter 4, I think tutorial 5 I don't have time lah because I need to check every one of you punya works, right? So for your tutorial 4, I can promise to check it for you and then comment your tutorial 4 so that later during this time we only cover tutorial 5 and 6. Okay, but your tutorial 4, all of you must submit before before Monday, meaning Sunday lah, at least, so that I have time to check. I have time to check all of your answer for the questions for the tutorial 4. Chapter 6 is until which tutorial? Chapter 6. Chapter 6 tutorial is tutorial 6 lah. Yeah. Chapter tutorial 4 is for your chapter 4, and then tutorial 5 is for your tutorial 5. Chapter 5. Okay, so if you if you are confident that you can answer for the question tutorial 4, then no need to, I mean, you still need to answer the questions lah, but no need for me to check lah. So whoever wants me to check for your tutorial 4, because um, we are not going to discuss that, because I'm afraid we don't have enough time to cover tutorial 5 and 6, then I will comment for the tutorial 4. Meaning the discussion of tutorial 4 based on what I check later and comment later. So I will not give you also the direct apalah. Okay, understand tak? Everyone can understand what I'm trying to deliver. I know sometimes my words are berbelit-belit. Okay. Okay, so whoever of you want me to check your tutorial 4, then you can submit before Monday. Okay. So if you don't have any questions, then we can dismiss our class now. Okay, bye everyone. Thank you for your cooperation. Okay, bye.